bed. Welcome to Land House. In this video, I'm going to be making this toddler house bed for my daughter. If you're interested, then keep watching. To get started with this build, there are going to be lots of cuts. So I'm going to use my miter saw, and of course I have my protective gear such as ear protection, eye protection, and because I'm going to be doing so many cuts, I'm also going to be using a mask. So the first cuts we're going to make are 4 4-foot boards. So I've got an 8-foot board that I'm going to be cutting in half. I need 6 53-inch boards. I also need 9 boards cut at 19 inches, and these will be used for the guardrails of the bed. They're also going to be split or ripped down so that we'll have 17 total of these. I'm going to take 3 24-inch boards and rip them in half for the railing, and the slats between the railing will be made from these 9 19-inch boards. So let's rip those down real quick. Now that the materials have been cut, longer pieces here and shorter pieces here, it's time to get started with the assembly. The first thing I'm going to build is this. This is going to be the front and back railing. So to get started, I have 3 pieces here that are equal length, and then these are the 2-foot pieces. So to assemble, they're going to be top and bottom, and then each of these will be placed inside to prevent falling out of the bed. So to assemble, I'm going to be using pocket hole screws. If you've never used them, they are quite simple. I'm going to use a jig that puts a very steep hole into the wood and allows for screws to go in at a very steep angle, and it holds things together very nice. Let's get started. I have the jig set up to work with 2x4s. I'm going to place this in here and then clamp it down. Now if you've never used this, I'll have a link in the description down below. You can find them on Amazon. I'm going to take this drill bit and put 2 holes in here. There you go, 2 very steep angled holes. This first piece needs to have these on both ends. The shorter pieces also have to have the same 2 holes put on each end. Now that I have the pocket holes drilled into each one of these pieces of wood, it's time to get them all sanded down. I'm going to go ahead and use all the typical safety gear because this kicks up a lot of small particles. Just finished up getting all of these sanded, and they look pretty good. This one right here had a little bit of a tear out, but I think it's going to be okay. Now, I'm going to measure out my bottom board here, and at 6, 12, and 18, I'm going to place a mark, and do the same up here at the top. And that's going to be the location that I attach these middle pieces to. So what I want to do now is put just a little dab of wood glue on here. And turn this into place. And now I'm going to be using these Kreg pocket hole screws. This is the 2.5-inch version. Put that into position. Make sure everything is locked down. I think to keep this in place, I'm going to go ahead and use a clamp just to make sure it doesn't move. Okay, that should keep it in place quite nicely, nice and flush. I'm just going to use my drill here to get this attached. Okay. 2 screws in every one of these. Should prevent it from spinning around. Got all 3 of those done. I'm going to flip over and repeat here. Get this lined up. And then I'm going to clamp again to make sure it stays into position. The pocket hole jig leaves behind a hole, as you would expect. So to fill that and make it look prettier, I'm going to use a 3/8 inch dowel. I'm just going to spin that into the open pocket hole until it stops moving. Then I'm going to use my Japanese pool saw to cut off the dowel flush with the rest of the piece. And that's going to make a nice smooth plug for that hole. And I can come back with the sander and make sure it is nice and sanded down. Now the next side, I've already got the steep cut in here, so I'm going to just take my saw again and trim down about a 1/2 inch or so away from the plug. And that makes another plug that I can then press down in here. The second plug is not as easy to work with as the first, but just kind of have to push it in there. Once it gets a certain distance, I then swap over to a piece of wood and a hammer. So to make sure that goes all the way in, I'm going to use this little block of scrap and then hammer that in. There we go. And now I can sand that and it will be nice and smooth. Okay, that completes the front and back railing. Now I'm going to make one more of these, and it's going to be on the side, and that's going to be kind of the door basically. And the only difference is going to be that there'll be a piece on the very end that will act as a close off piece. But so that completes those 2 pieces. Now there's also going to be a rail just like this on the back, and it's going to have much more of these supports in the middle. I'm probably not going to bring you along for that because it's more of this exact same. But one thing I didn't mention, whenever I put it together, I did place it on the table first and make sure it was level and mark the pieces so that basically you don't want one side to be higher or lower than the other because it needs to fit into the frame. But anyway, let's move on to the next step. You've already seen me build the rails, but just wanted to show you what I'm doing with the back side here. I've got a 53-inch board, and every 6 inches I have come along and put a mark for a new one of these to go, and just means that the very last one is going to be 1 inch short, but should be all right. And then I'm just going to be using the glue and the screws to attach this just like I did with the other. Now it's time to cut the boards that will make up the A-frame portion of this Toddler house bed. This may seem like the most daunting piece of the whole build, but let me show you a way that makes it pretty easy. I'm going to use my square here to mark out a 45 on the very end of this board. Need to cut that off real quick. Okay, this has to be fairly specific here. I want to, from the edge of the 45, I want to mark out 19.5 inches. Okay, need to make a cut there so that this piece will butt up perfectly with the other one. Now I've already cut the 45 on the second piece that makes up the roof. This needs to be at 21 3/4 inch from the farthest peak up here. So I'm going to measure this out and do 21 3/4. And I'm going to go ahead and once again use the miter saw to cut that. Those 45s with those lengths will give you the A-frame roof you're looking for. But if you'll notice here, a 2x4 is 3.5 inches, and there's all this extra space over here that has to be removed. If you will remove exactly 1 inch, then that will actually give you the correct length there. So what you can do is just use a table saw and rip down that. So that's what I'm going to do right now. To join the two top pieces, I'm just going to use the pocket hole joinery, and I'm going to put these pocket holes onto the shorter piece. Now it's time for sanding. I've got the two angled pieces that make the very top. I have the support beam that goes on the top, and I have the two sides that will be, I think 4 foot long is what we measured. And then of course I've already got this piece put together here. So, alright, I'm going to get this sanded and then I'll come back and we'll get this assembled. The two sides also need to have pocket holes. Go ahead and get those installed. Now I'm going to use these two far ones here because the angle that it's going to be installing to, you want to put your screws here on the fatter side and not have them pop through this side. So that's why I'm going to put them on this further side here. Time to get this side assembled. I've got the two top pieces first. Now I'm going to go ahead and use glue on these joints as well as the pocket holes. So just going to stick that together, and then I'm going to use pocket hole screw here. Wipe off this excess wood glue with a rag here. I'm going to set this up top here, and I'm going to be using the 4-foot boards next. So I'm going to line that up here, and once again I'm going to be using the wood glue with the pocket screws. The next piece is this center brace that goes up top. This one is really important because it helps with spacing and also helps with keeping things from racking later on. So get that placed in here, right there at the top. And then just like the other pieces, I'm going to be using the pocket holes. The process for the safety railing is pretty much the same. I'm just going to plop a little wood glue on here. Now I just need to get this placed in here and match up the ends. This piece is now assembled. I'm going to come back here and fill all the pocket holes with a 3/8 inch dowel, just like I did before, just to make sure this thing looks nice and finished. I'm giving this a nice coat of white paint. Definitely pull out any of the imperfections and should make it look quite nice. I finally have everything painted and it's time to assemble the last pieces here. This is going to be the front of the toddler bed, and this is going to be the doorway. I've got this piece right here going all the way up to the top as a support so that the railing is not going to just be wobbling around. So what I want to do is get this attached, and this is basically the last module of this setup. Everything else will be stuck in here together. So, alright, just as all the rest of these, I'm going to apply a little bit of wood glue and then get these screwed in here. I figured since I can clamp this area, I might as well. Should help out with the process here. After 3 weeks of work, it's finally time to get this thing assembled. Not exactly sure the best method for getting this together, so I just got it on the ground here. This is the back piece, and this is the side. So I'm just going to begin using these pocket hole screws to get everything attached. Okay, one side, the other side. Now I'm gonna get the front on here. Whoops, boink. I decided to lay this down to help me get everything lined up a bit better. Laying this down on the ground is definitely the way to go. It's making it a whole lot easier to get this flat against the ground. To get the very top installed, I just ran the screws just far enough to scratch here, and it held things in place so I could really get it attached. Let's take a look at it here. So far, I think it has turned out well. Could have done a few things different. I should have let one board be all the way across instead of having to use this 2x4 down here. I could have shaved off about 1/8 of an inch here or so to drop this down just a little bit. And I probably could have installed this back piece backwards to hide the pocket holes that are here in the corner, but hopefully it'll be okay. I've got to touch up a little paint spot here or there, but I think it turned out to look really great. Time to put the mattress in there. You ready to get your mattress in here? Hopefully it fits. Ta-da! Ta-da! Do you like your new bed? New bed? Daddy. Hey. There you are. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have found this build helpful, hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to share this on your Facebook and Instagram if you know somebody that could use a bed frame like this for their toddler. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.